There were bursts of thunder, dark clouds piled up, and rumbling thunder resounded through the earth. A little fox is going through the catastrophe on Beishao Mountain. This is a nine-tailed white fox. It is very petite. Its big fluffy and white tail is 2 or 3 times as long as its body. In front of her, she was very beautiful. It's a pity that at this time her tail and snow-white fox fur had already been chopped black by one thunder after another. Here and there a piece fell off, and the blood stained the fur, which looked extremely miserable. Once again, the little fox was knocked to the ground by a thunderbolt, and rolled several times. Blood flowed from the mouth of the little fox, and the 2 pointed ears and the fur all over the body drooped. She looked up at the last thunder that was brewing in the clouds in the sky. Her left eye was blue like a lake, and her right was red like a flame. It was quite strange. After a touch of fear and helplessness, the body trembled slightly. She whimpered, turned her head and licked a hairy tail that was about to be bald, and the whole fox's heart ached. Then she gritted her teeth, and at the moment when the thick thunder struck the sky, her eyes turned red, the fur of the whole fox stood on end, and then she jumped up, facing the thunder, with 9 big tails. Chi was folded over her head, like a soft white cage, covering her body. Rumble. The sky and the earth are shaking. The thunder lasted for a long time, and at the moment when it finally dissipated, a little fox covered in bruises fell from midair and landed on a soft meadow. The wind blows and the grass is low. I don't know how long it has passed. Birds, beasts, insects, and fish gradually start to move again near Beishao Mountain. The little fox in the meadow finally wakes up. It seemed very weak. She was dazed for a while, and then felt that her body had become different. She successfully survived the catastrophe, and now she has become a real 9-tailed sky fox. She was so happy that the pain on her body seemed to disappear. Her parents are both 9-tailed foxes, and she has been a 9-tailed fox since she was born. Compared with those wild foxes who cultivated from one tail, she can be said to have been born at the finish line. Normally, she should have crossed the catastrophe a long time ago, became a celestial fox, and entered the ranks of immortals. However, due to her own inertia, easygoing and other reasons, she lived several hundred years before she finally started to cross the catastrophe. She is a 9-tailed fox. But now, she was finally able to reunite with them. She happily licked her fur. According to the countless examples of ascension she had seen over the centuries, she would soon descend the ladder and take her to the heaven. She had to make herself tidy and beautiful. Just licking and licking, she suddenly froze. What is that scorched, black, and somewhat rough-looking strip in the grass? Why so familiar? More than one. 1, 2, 3. She counted stiffly, and the ominous thoughts in her heart became stronger and stronger, and finally she counted to 9. Her whole fox was stiff, turning her neck bit by bit, looking at her ass. Where there should have been 9 big fluffy tails, but now there is nothing, only a fox's buttocks with smooth and scorched fur. 1. Strip. Tail. Var. All. No. Have. On Beishao Mountain, the wind blows gently, the sun shines softly, the birds chirp and the insects chirp melodiously. Suddenly, a shrill howl of a fox rose from the ground, piercing the sky, frightening all living beings to tremble and hide in unison. Xiaohu, stop crying! On Fox Mountain, a charming woman in a red jacket who looked 30 or 40 years old persuaded a girl in a white dress in front of her who was crying so much that she was about to twitch, her face full of helplessness. Why, my tail, woo woo woo, my tail! The girl cried out of breath, holding a pile of scorched tails in her arms. Her heart ached beyond herself. Little ba, xiao ba, my tail. What should I do? My tail fell off, woohoo! She doesn't wear makeup, but her appearance is beautiful and pure. Her black hair is only coiled with a long white hairy belt. Because it is messy, half of it is coiled and the other is loose. In addition, Her eyes are as big and red as walnuts when she cries. The nose is red, and the whole person looks very pitiful, but even more lovable. A flash of jealousy flashed in the eyes of the enchanting woman, which was fleeting, and she sighed, I don't know much about the nine-tailed white fox. I'm just an eight-tailed fox, or a red fox. Neither of our tails are suitable for you. I think I can only find your clansman, and see who can give you a tail. She said sadly, but you don't have a tail now, so you can't be regarded as a nine-tailed sky fox, and the ladder will not come down to you. However, she is the only one left in the world with a nine-tailed fox. Where can she find a tail that can be attached to her body? Baiziahu was about to cry again. She touched her butt, can't it grow out? The woman looked at him helplessly. Baiziahu was also discouraged. If the nine-tailed fox loses one tail, it will lose one. Unless there is a heaven-defying cultivation, it is impossible to grow it back. She began to think, it seemed that there was really no one of her own in the world, so where would she find the tail? She suddenly thought of a long, long time ago, she met a little white cat. That cat was small and weak, and was bullied badly by other cats and other monsters, so she stood up to support it and took it to play with it. She liked that kitten very much, and felt that it was too pitiful that it could only live for more than 10 years, so she plucked 9 very important furs from her own tail and gave them to the other party, helping the other party to repair 9 years. Tail. She hadn't seen him since then, maybe it had already ascended, or maybe it was still in the world. If it was still in the world, then the 9 tails could only be cultivated by relying on her own 9-tailed fox fur. Maybe it could make her pass it on to your own ass? She doesn't ask for more, just one, just let her not have a bald butt, and she will slowly figure out the rest. She immediately went to look for the white cat, but hundreds of years had passed, and she didn't even know the other's name, so where could she find it? She has been to the place where she saw the white cat, she has traveled all over the place where she took the white cat to show off, and she also broke into the territory of the cat demon clan, and was chased away as an intruder come out. Baiziahu, who didn't go out very much for hundreds of years, became very homely and cowardly, almost walked the road of his whole life during this period of time. She also felt her own weakness. Without a tail, her cultivation base plummeted. Because there was no ladder to guide her, she couldn't go to the fairy pond in the heaven to absorb the immortal energy to heal, and she couldn't heal at all. Finally, one day, she gritted her teeth and spent more than half of her remaining spiritual power. She drew a formation on the ground, sat cross-legged in it, pierced her 10 fingers, and 10 blood beads floated around her body. She clasped her fingers slightly. He began to count quickly, and suddenly, 10 blood beads gathered together and rushed towards one part of the formation. Baiziahu's face turned extremely pale in an instant, and when he opened his eyes to look at that place, his expression changed. How could it be? The white cat is not in the heavens, nor here, but has become immortal in several lifetimes, and now it is in a small world that is full of demons and is about to collapse. Baiziahu's complexion changed. She couldn't go to the heaven, and the remaining spiritual power was enough to support her to go to that small world, but if she couldn't get a tail, her injury couldn't heal, and she would never return in the end. To go, or not to go? She touched the hair band on her head. This is the hair she replaced on her body. She is usually in good health and doesn't shed much hair, she only saved such a band all her life. She imagined that it was her own tail, her eyes were red again, and she touched the place behind her where the tail used to grow, and finally looked up at the sky, where her parents and elder brother were still waiting for her. A flash of determination flashed in her eyes. She took a deep breath, pinched her hands. The next moment, she suddenly stopped, ran out of the formation, and took the whole room she lived in into her mustard space, even the outside, the spiritual flowers and grasses, the Lington that I am used to bathing and playing, and the beautiful stones I picked up are all packed up, and finally I picked up the little magic chicken that was sleeping soundly in the chicken coop, and sniffed, "Meng meng, let's go." The fluffy black chick woke up startled, opened its round eyes, and looked at her in bewilderment. Bai Xiaohu finally took a look at Beishao Mountain where he lived for more than 500 years. His eyes were full of nostalgia and anxiety about the future. Finally, he stepped into the formation, pinched his hands, and disappeared in the next moment. In the formation. This world has lost the breath of the last nine-tailed fox. Open a new pit. The serialization pit next door is not very well written, and the new pit here has a new atmosphere, and the daily updates are continuous. Bai Xiaohu felt very smelly, just regained consciousness. Before she opened her eyes, she smelled an unspeakable stench. The smell of blood, sweat, feces, and many other smells that she didn't know were intertwined, making her almost unable to breathe. She quietly opened her eyes amidst these smells. What I saw was a dusty place, like a big and dilapidated house, and the light from outside came in from some broken holes in a mess. A few sloppy-looking human giants walked around, holding long black things, guns, in their hands, or knives with dried blood. They are ferocious, they are furious, they are like beasts driven into a corner, full of tyranny and madness. Bai Xiaohu felt that the situation was not right, because she was lying on the cold and rough ground with her hands and feet tied up, and she was surrounded by people who had experienced the same situation, and there could be more than a dozen people lying on the ground at a glance. She didn't know why it became like this, her mind was very confused, but she looked down hard, and she was still wearing the cloud fantasy cassock before crossing, which was in the style of a long white dress. Effectiveness greatly reduced. She mobilized her spiritual power secretly, but after activating the formation, the spiritual power was only left at the bottom, and as soon as she activated it, her body hurt so badly that she couldn't use it at all. And because you can't use spiritual power, you can't open the mustard dimension either. Bai Xiaohu frowned, it was undoubtedly her own body, but why was she arrested? After thinking about it, when the formation was positioned, she set it at the place closest to the cat she was looking for. Could it be that the cat was nearby? She immediately looked at the unlucky humans from another world around her. Before she could lock the target, the door was kicked open, and another big man walked in. He was probably the leader of the other big guys, because those big guys looked very respectful to him. This big guy came straight to the bound humans, and picked out a young man from the crowd with his hands. The boy suddenly screamed and struggled frantically, but his hands and feet were tied and he didn't have much strength, so he was being lifted while lifting the chick. Speaking of chick cubs, where's his Meng Meng? Bai Xiaohu couldn't help being distracted. Hearing a crisp sound, the big man slapped the boy on the face, and asked furiously, "Where are those supplies? Don't say I'll kill you." The boy yelled, "Don't you think I'll tell you? I'll tell you, my brother is Liu Ye from the Zhongcheng base, if you dare to touch me, he won't let you go." The big man sneered, "You are Liu Ye's younger brother? Then I am still Liu Ye's father. I have never heard of Liu Ye having any brothers." The young man continued to poke his neck and said, "He is really my elder brother. He was lost since he was a child. He only recognized him before the end of the world, and separated after the end of the world. I came here this time to look for him." The big man stared at him for a while, then said coldly, "You better not lie to me." As soon as he pushed and shoved, the boy fell out heavily, right in front of Bai Xiaohu, shaking up dust all over the place. Bai Xiaohu couldn't understand what they were talking about at all, and was taken aback by the person who threw him over. At the same time, she smelled an aura from the boy, which was the aura of the cat demon she was looking for, but it was very faint. If there seems to be nothing. She hurriedly stretched her neck, smelled it and closed her eyes to feel it. It seemed that she was right, it was this kind of breath. Bai Xiaohu's eyes lit up, and he looked at the young man who was thrown to the ground with astonishment and surprise. Is this the person she is looking for? She looked at the human boy carefully. He coughed on the ground, his shoulders trembled, and he seemed to be crying. He couldn't see what his face looked like. The cat in her memory was also so weak, and was bullied by other goblins. Only dare to shrink in the corner and cry tremblingly. Her eyes gradually swept down, locked on the others in the dim light. Don't you know if you touch it? She struggled secretly, and found that her body was so weak that she couldn't break free from the ropes that bound her hands, and she couldn't mobilize her spiritual power. Touching the ground, he retracted his legs, and with the excellent flexibility of the nine-tailed fox clan, he wrapped the hands tied behind his back around his legs, and came to the front. The back of her hand seemed to have been worn out on the ground, it was burning hot, being struck by Tian Li in this way, her body is really extremely fragile now. But ignoring these things, she squirmed towards the boy in front of her in a posture of falling to the ground, and stretched out her sinful hand. Gently, quietly, secretly, touched the other party's ass. Well, this is quite upturned. She didn't notice that the other party froze suddenly. She moved her hand slowly and touched the tailbone between the two buttocks. It was strange, why didn't she feel it? Does it have to be investigated with spiritual power? Suddenly, her heart trembled, as if someone was staring at her. She suddenly raised her head and looked at the messy holes on the high roof. Was there anything staring at herself? I was distracted and didn't notice that the buttocks under my hands were trembling, and then there was the scream of this human teenager. While screaming, he crawled away, and turned his head to stare in horror and anger. Stinky rascal! Others also looked over, including the other people who were also and those big men. Bai Xiaohu blinked, although he didn't understand, but he was scolding himself, right? The young man saw that Bai Xiaohu was a woman, and she was, a girl with loose hair but hard to hide her beauty, who might even be younger than him. He was stunned, and then his face became even uglier, as if he couldn't believe it. Bai Xiaohu looked back at him purely and innocently. Those big men surrounded him. The leader who had just slapped the boy asked fiercely, "What's going on?" The young man moved his mouth, as if he didn't know what to say, and finally said sullenly, "It's okay." He thought it was an old pervert who was touching his butt, and he couldn't bear it any longer, so he screamed out. Who knows, it would be a female hooligan. Even though her gender is female, it can't hide the fact that she is a hooligan, but looking at that picture, it looks so beautiful. His face, those clear and innocent black eyes, really can't say anything to blame. He even turned his body subconsciously, trying to hide the girl's face behind him. But it was too late, those big men had already seen Bai Xiaohu's face. Although the light is dim, Bai Xiaohu's skin is extremely white, his eyebrows are black, his eyelashes are as long as crows, his facial features are soft and clear, and his long hair can shine, scattered but not messy, soft and shiny, and he is wearing a white dress, the skirt spread out on the ground, like a stretched white flower. This appearance is really not of the same breed as the disheveled people around him. Whether it is the leader or the younger brother behind, they all stared dumbfounded, and the leader's big man's eyes lit up. Who caught this girl? Everyone looked at each other in blank dismay. Had they ever caught such a beauty? Why is there no impression at all? And even if they didn't catch it with their own hands, why did they seem like they couldn't see such a beautiful woman before? And if they saw it, who would be willing to throw it on the ground and ignore it? It's all weird. But this group of desperados didn't care to think so much at the moment, and the one at the head went directly to drag Bai Xiaohu. Bai Xiaohu quickly put his hands on the ground, sat up and stepped back. What is this human going to do? Don't think that it was far and dark just now. She didn't see his hand picking between his teeth and scratching his armpit. The big man was not annoyed at being dodged by her, and continued to want to touch his face persistently. Bai Xiaohu stared in horror at this stinky hand that still had an obvious smell and wanted to touch his face, and wanted to mobilize his spiritual power and slap him in the face. On the roof, someone who stood quietly watching for a long time also narrowed his eyes slightly. His hands were surrounded by lightning, and he was about to make a move. But in the corner, a chubby black figure leaped out and scratched at the face of the big man with a wretched face. Ah! The big man fell on his back, took 2 steps back, covered his face, blood was dripping between his fingers in the blink of an eye, and the black shadow fell into Bai Xiaohu's arms. Bai Xiaohu felt it when it came out, and now hugged it in surprise. Meng Meng. Meng Meng is a demon chick, covered in jet black, lingering with a touch of demonic energy, lost his way and crashed into Beishao Mountain while being hunted down. At that time, Bai Xiaohu was trapped in Beishao Mountain for hundreds of years, and he had no one to accompany him. He was very happy to see this little chicken. In addition, the fox likes chicken very much by nature, although he likes to eat chicken, so Bai Xiaohu didn't care about it. It is a demon, and it has been raised with care for more than 100 years, and its feelings are naturally extremely deep. She knew that after she left Beishao Mountain, this little devil chicken might not get out of Beishao Mountain and would be torn to pieces by the big and small fairies on the mountain, so she took it away with her. Just now I was worried about whether it was lost, but now I feel relieved when I see it. Her hands were still tied, and she hugged the little black chicken in an awkward position, and the little black chicken also rubbed her face affectionately. Ju ju ju. It told her that it had just woken up, and was in that dark corner. It was startled to find that she was not around, but fortunately, it found her right away. Bai Xiaohu touched it, and was surprised to find that after it came to this world, the demonic energy that had been weakened by him for more than 100 years had become agitated. How is this going? Before she could figure it out, the group of big men saw that their boss was injured, and the culprit was just like anyone else. They were all angry, and the leader of the big man even pointed at the little devil chicken, "Kill that thing to me." Paused. Done, don't hurt that girl. Bai Xiaohu's expression changed, he couldn't understand their words, but could he still not understand their intentions? She hugged Meng Meng tightly to prevent him from jumping out again. These people don't know any way or strength, and there are still so many people, she is worried that it will get hurt. Seeing these people rushing towards her, she wanted to mobilize her spiritual power and break the rough ropes in her hands, but as soon as her spiritual power came up, her chest froze, and she almost vomited a mouthful of blood. He quickly touched the hairy hairband on his head. This thing can also be regarded as her natal magic weapon, but it is not as powerful as the magic weapons given to her by her parents and brothers, but those were all destroyed in the confrontation with Tian Li, and there is not much left in her mustard space. And this natal magic weapon has an advantage, that is, it matches her mind, and can drive 1 or 2 even without spiritual power. She was about to pull out her hair belt, but she heard a bang, a click, and her eyes suddenly lit up. Amidst the splashes of tiles and gravel, a bolt of lightning smashed the high and dilapidated roof above her head, and struck straight down. In the middle of the journey, it split into several roads, hitting those big men respectively. Those people screamed, and were twitched by the lightning, and after the lightning disappeared, they fell down stiffly, scorched, and smoking. The scene was suddenly silent. Bai Xiaohu. Little demon chicken. One person and one chicken stared round their eyes in exactly the same way, and couldn't believe what they saw. Is there actually a thunder here? Bai Xiaohu, oh my god, my whole body seems to be hurting, especially the tailbone. Little demon chicken, thunder or something, the demons are really scared. Then there was another sound from above, and a person jumped down from above. It was a full 2 to 3 feet high, and this person was as light and easy as jumping a step. He landed silently, and his slightly bent figure slowly stood up straight. The man in black turned his face and was just standing in the light from the big hole above his head. Everyone could see his appearance clearly. With a slender figure, broad shoulders, thick eyebrows, and deep eyes, and a stern demeanor, he is an extremely handsome and dangerous man. The boy who was touched by Bai Xiaohu shouted in surprise, "Brother!" The man glanced at him indifferently, as if he was looking at a completely irrelevant person, and then turned his gaze towards Bai Xiaohu. Bai Xiaohu's face turned pale, and he subconsciously dodged back, bumping into the wall, and Meng Meng slipped into her arms with a chirp. They all felt the lingering aura of thunder from this man. Trembling, trembling JPG. Oh my god, is there any terrifying existence in this world that can create sky thunder by itself? What about the small human world that is about to collapse? It's too late to go back now. QAQ in an interview much later. Lu yet, vicissitudes. The first time I saw my wife, she was touching my brother's ass. Reporter, well, condolences. Lu yet, satisfied and proud, but soon she set her sights on my ass. Reporter. The male protagonist is on the stage, he, I can release it on a regular basis while I still have some manuscripts in my hand, so is it scheduled for morning, noon, or evening? Luya looked at the panicked little girl in front of him. She was indeed very beautiful, and she looked very young. The way her eyes were wide open reminded me of a little white rabbit cornered by a hunter. However, she was dressed a little strangely. It's been half a year since the end of the world. Would anyone still have such long hair, wear such long and layered white skirts, and run around outside with this image? And apart from some dust on her body, there were no other scars, and she could be said to be clean. The person who can maintain this state either has a deep background and someone is protecting her anytime and anywhere, but he has not noticed other people nearby, or he is extremely strong and has no scruples, but this appearance of fear is not like pretending. He glanced at the chick-like thing in her arms that kept digging deep. Could it be because there are mutant animal guardians? Then when he thought of the scene when he came here and looked down from the hole above, what he saw was the scene where she wriggled and touched Zhuang Qingzai's. No matter how hard it was, his expression became a little weird. Bai Ziahu didn't know that in just a few seconds, his image in this man's heart had been wandering between the gamer world, a hooligan who pretended to be a pig and eat a tiger, and a hooligan who was very lucky and loyal to protect his master. She was stared at furiously by him, afraid that he would give her a thunderbolt. The situation was unclear, the enemy was strong, I was weak, and I couldn't understand the language, so she rolled her eyeballs, gave a flattering smile, and gave herself a few snow-white, shiny little flowers. Fox teeth. Among the beams of light, floating dust swayed leisurely. She was hiding in the darkness, but this smile was a bit more eye-catching than the sun. Everyone's eyes were uncontrollably attracted to her. Luye paused, turned his eyes away, and threw a small knife to Zhuang Qingzai who was beside him. Untie, come out. Then he turned around and left. Zhuang Qingzai frantically caught the knife and cut the rope for other people. These people seemed to be in a gang. When Zhuang Qingzai was beaten, the others were silent like dead people. Now they are all moving, scrambling to first cut the rope. No one paid any attention to Bai Ziahu for a while. She sat by the wall, looked at the tightly bound ropes on her hands and feet, and couldn't get it off even though she was pecking and scratching on the ropes. She realized that the two of them are very different now. If he is weak, he looks at the hairy hair band hanging on his shoulders. While no one was paying attention, she turned sideways and moved her hands to the side of the hairband. With a thought, the talisman was lifted up, and one end slipped across the rope, and the thumb-thick cable snapped silently. Hey, you! A grumpy shout. Bai Ziahu quickly put down his hands, pinched the two severed ends of the rope in his hands, and maintained the tied state, looking up at the boy who came to him. Zhuang Qingzai looked at the beautiful girl with a distorted face. You, what did you do by touching my just now? Bai Ziahu blinked, but didn't say a word. He couldn't understand, couldn't speak, couldn't make a sound. Zhuang Qingzai looked at the innocent and even well-behaved girl with confusion in his eyes. Could it be that he made a mistake? Is he hallucinating? No matter how you look at it, this person doesn't look like someone who would secretly touch a man's ass. Lu Yi's indifferent voice came from outside. Move quickly. Zhuang Qingzai said Seeing him sharpen the rope with a knife, Bai Ziahu was a little anxious for him. It seems that the humans here are not all that strong. The group of people here are very weak, and the few big men who fell just now are also very weak. Thinking about it this way, I felt a little relieved. The rope was finally frayed. She pretended to have just untied it, got the rope off her wrist, threw it on the ground, and then went to untie the rope on her feet. After hesitating for a moment, he decided to go with them first. The place where they stayed was the inner room, and there was another room outside. They were both very large and tall, and there were many things piled up there. Baiziahu later found out that it was an abandoned warehouse. When I came to the outside room, the man was still there, standing in front of the two gates, and said indifferently when he saw that everyone had arrived, "After leaving here, I will arrange for someone to take you to the base. After that, you can do whatever you want, and I will do whatever you want nothing to do." Zhuang Qingzhe hurriedly said, "Brother, you don't care about me?" "Don't, I came out with the caravan to find you." Lu Ye said indifferently, "I have no obligation to be your parent." Zhuang Qingzhe muttered, "Are you blaming me for being caught? I didn't expect that there would be a group of desperados here, but didn't I let Sister Litang escape to seek help from you? You came so fast, did you? Sister Litang notified you, right? He looked like I knew you would come." Baiziahu stood not far behind the crowd, and suddenly smelled a stronger smell of cats and cats. She looked at the two standing together in surprise. Came from them. But the boy's body is not so strong, could it be from that man? Enduring the fear of lightning on the man's body, she squeezed to the front, wanting to judge at a close distance, but who knew that the man suddenly raised his hand, a blue-purple lightning shot out, and the two doors in front of him were blown away. Baiziahu. Her hair was so excited that she flew back and hurriedly hid, but the others were also frightened and backed away. In a hurry, she was pushed forward and staggered into the man's arm. The lightning in the man's hand was still there, and she was suddenly numb on one side of her body. The familiar tingling sensation of being struck by lightning made her whole body explode, and she jumped to the side with a groan. Lu Ye turned his head and glanced at her. Baiziahu's face was full of shock, his long hair was messily draped over his shoulders, and his small face was pale. Lu Ye looked at the electric arc on his palm again. "Is it so scary?" He clasped his palms together to accept the power. The arc was annihilated in his palm, and there was a slight crackling sound. Baiziahu saw how easily he said to strike the thunder, and he struck the thunder. He said to stop the momentum, he stopped the momentum. He said to smash people, he smashed people like charcoal, and he said to break the door, he smashed the door into pieces on the ground, with a look that can play with the majestic thunder and lightning. The appearance between the palms of the hands is even more fearful and terrified. What kind of world is this? What kind of person is this? Difficult, is it the incarnation of heaven? If he finds out that he is from another world, will he chop himself back at once? Perhaps, he has discovered his identity. Baiziahu frantically thought about it, and Lang Buting met the other party's deep eyes that were calm but seemed to be able to see everything, hurriedly avoided, and hugged the little devil chicken who was also trembling tremblingly. As for the feline aura, there was nothing left when the person struck out the thunder and lightning, and she didn't dare to explore it anymore. She just wanted to stay as far away from this person as possible. Lu Ye, who frightened people with a single look, changed color and shrank his neck. Lu Ye has seen a lot of respectful and awe-inspiring gazes towards him, but this is the first time he has been feared by a little girl like a tiger, as if bully and bird/beast are written on his forehead. This experience was so novel that he couldn't help but look at the other person again. Baiziahu moved away a few small steps like a crab, trying to keep calm on his face. Lu Ye withdrew his gaze and looked forward. The door of the warehouse has been broken open, sunlight floods in, and everything in front of it can be seen at a glance. This is a factory built on a hillside in the outskirts, and the warehouse is only a small part of it. The entire factory is surrounded by high walls. At this time, outside the fence was a dense crowd of zombies, looking around a large area, scratching and roaring through a layer of iron railings, and even stretched their hands in. Others also saw this scene, all of them turned pale, and Zhuang Qingzai screamed, "So many zombies!" Bai Xiaoqiao also looked over, and then just froze. Where can she see any zombies clearly in her eyes? There is a vast black mist, and under the black mist, there is a vaguely human-shaped thing scratching and rushing stiffly, like a walking corpse. That's all. What shocked her was that the black mist was simply demonic energy. What a strong magic energy! She thought that she used the formation method to calculate that this world is a world that is about to collapse due to the invasion of demonic energy. She looked at the distance outside the wall, and there was also a lot of devilish energy on the hillside, and a cloud of devilish energy probably represented one or several walking corpses. And farther away, be it the mountains and rivers, the faint city buildings, or the land farther away, they are all shrouded in thick or light magic energy. The world is grey, and the sky is also shrouded in a faint magic energy, even glowing an ominous dark red. Humans may not be able to see this devilish energy, but Bai Xiaohu can see it clearly. She feels out of breath, and thinks it's no wonder that when she inhales the first breath of air here, she feels very stuffy and uncomfortable. Compared with Beishao Mountain, where her aura is overflowing with divine mountains and beautiful waters, this place is simply a hellish existence. At the same time, she also understood why the demon energy in her body became restless and strong when Meng Meng came here. Because there is devilish energy everywhere here, devilish energy that can be used for its cultivation. Sure enough, Meng Meng poked her head out excitedly, looking at the demonic energy outside the wall with her jet black eyes, and then chirped at Bai Xiaohu. It was asking Bai Xiaohu if he could absorb the magic energy. After being raised by Bai Xiaohu for more than 100 years, it has never absorbed the magic energy, and its cultivation has retreated to the point where it almost does not exist. It is used to being a pet chicken that eats and sleeps, and has almost forgotten the nature of the demon race. However, feeling such a strong demonic energy at this moment, it still can't help but move around. But if Bai Xiaohu doesn't let it absorb and practice, it will naturally be obedient. Bai Xiaohu understood what it meant, and stroked the fluff on its body with complicated emotions. In her world, the demons represented evil, cruelty and heterogeneity, but since she was able to secretly raise a little demon chicken, she naturally did not have much prejudice against the demons in her heart. The reason why she did not let it continue to practice was also because there is no magic energy on the first mountain at all. But here and now, her cultivation base has been greatly damaged, and the road ahead is uncertain. If Meng Meng is not allowed to practice, the two of them may not be able to survive for a day. She rubbed the head of the little devil chicken, and said in a low voice, "From now on, the two of us will rely on you, but even if we are successful in cultivation, we can't harm innocent people, you know." Chirp, chirp. The little devil chicken happily responded. Liu Ye heard Bai Xiaohu muttering something. The voice was soft, but the language had never been heard before, and there was an indescribable rhythm, so he couldn't help but cast a glance. Bai Xiaohu and Moji moment, dare not move, dare not move. Liu Ye, is she this type of hooligan, or that type of hooligan? Bai Xiaohu, a man who can artificially bring down lightning, don't dare to provoke him. Secretly add an update and applaud myself in the future. It is tentatively scheduled to be updated at 9 o'clock in the morning. If there is no update at 9 o'clock one day, it means that I have run out of saved manuscripts _3_. As a group of people came out, the zombies outside the wall became more and more excited when they smelled it, and some even climbed over the wall. Zhuang Qingzai yelled and hid behind Liu Ye. When Liu Ye raised his hand, a thunderbolt whipped the zombies over the wall like a whip. Bai Xiaohu shrank his neck again, and fell behind the crowd, trying to keep the distance. Just like that, Liu Ye led a group of people to the iron gate of the factory, saying, "I will make a way through the corpses, you run out in time, and someone will meet you on the road." Zhuang Qingzai said, "Brother, what about you?" Liu Ye didn't answer this question, and said calmly, "For the sake of you being a dealer, I will save you once, and I will have nothing to do with you in the future." Zhuang Qingzai opened his mouth, his eyes were red, like a discarded puppy. Liu Ye remained indifferent, raised his hands slightly, and the lightning flashed again in his palms. Immediately, a thin thunderbolt split the lock on the iron door. When the iron door was knocked open by the zombies outside, and the zombies poured in like a tide, several thick thunderbolts were released from Liu Ye's palm, first projected into the air, and then bombarded in the corpses from top to bottom. One path split into two paths split into four paths, and in the end, it turned out to be densely packed, until the corpses were chopped down one by one, and a passage was created. Such ferocity and power stunned everyone. Everyone's faces were illuminated by lightning, and they were unanimously shocked and stunned. Liu Ye said in a deep voice, "Don't be dumbfounded." Zhuang Qingzai came back to his senses, and hurriedly greeted the dozen or so people who followed him, "Hurry up and rush down." A group of people quickly followed him. These people were all caravans from the Heikan base, and they had seen some scenes before. Bai Xiaohu hesitated a little, should he go with him? Looking at the tall back of the man who was still striking the thunder, she swallowed, and thought to herself, "Let's just forget about it, let's explore by myself, if it doesn't work, just be shameless, dig a hole and get into the original shape, wait until Meng Meng has cultivated a little better before coming out by himself. If Meng Meng's cultivation is not going well, then find another way." Thinking of this, she backed up little by little, and slipped away before the man finished chopping up the zombie. When they ran to another part of the factory, they couldn't see the man, nor could they see the thunder and lightning. Bai Xiaohu and the little devil chicken really came back to life. Bai Xiaohu patted his chest, "I was scared to death." The little devil chicken chirped and chirped. Bai Xiaohu was just the after effect of being struck by lightning, and the demons were naturally afraid of thunder and lightning, the nemesis of evil. Suddenly both of them paused, and when they looked up, a cloud of black air staggered out from the corner in front. It was obviously a walking corpse, but it was covered in black and muddy by the evil energy, so in the eyes of a fox and a bird, it is impossible to see its original appearance. Bai Xiaohu squinted his eyes, touched the little magic chicken's forehead, "Meng Meng, it's up to you." With a cry, he rushed towards the zombie excitedly, tearing off a large piece of devilish energy with one paw, swallowed it in one gulp, smashed his mouth, and made two boo-boo sounds, disgusted that the devilish energy was too impurity. "Too much is unpalatable." Bai Xiaohu said, "Don't be picky, now there is only this devilish energy for you to eat." Meng Meng let out an aggrieved cry, flew up and continued to tear and swallow. The zombie couldn't feel the existence of the little devil chicken at all, and even because it was full of devil energy, it regarded it as the same kind, and only went towards Bai Xiaohu. Bai Xiaohu was not stupid, seeing that the other party's target was himself, just take it around in circles. One acted as the string for pulling the kite, and the other bit the back here and tore it there. The coordination was very tacit. After Zhuang Qingzai and others ran out, Liu Ye still chopped up the nearby zombies into charcoal. He didn't leave immediately, but turned around to look at the empty factory, and walked back again. When he came to the previous warehouse, the bodies of the hostage-takers were still lying there, next to the ropes that Zhuang Qingzai and others took over. He followed the location in his memory and found the pieces of rope that were closest to the wall. There are 4 of them, and when put together, it is obvious that the hands of the same person are bound. 2 of the fractures were rough with a knife, which looked uneven, while the other 2 fractures were extremely smooth, as if they were cut with a knife. The extremely sharp knife cuts in one go. Even Liu Ye himself, with his hands tightly bound, even with such a sharp knife in his hand, it is hard to say that he can cut so smoothly. This is a bit interesting. He stood up, walked out of the warehouse, listened to the movement nearby, and then headed in one direction. It didn't take long for him to see the picture of a man and a bird flying a kite to grind zombies. It was a first-class zombie. The whole body was rotten so badly that its joints could hardly be bent, so its movements were very stiff and slow. The little girl was easily making the bait, but to Luyi's surprise, the black chicken-like chicken, the bird-like thing, can fly around without flapping its wings, and it attacks the zombies again and again, but it doesn't directly touch the zombies, but seems to tear something away from the zombies. But this kind of attack made the zombies' movements slower and slower, and its ferocious roar became more and more sluggish, and finally fell down staggeringly. Baiziahu watched as the demonic energy on the walking corpse was eroded by Misty, and it became weaker and weaker. When it faded to a certain extent, the walking corpse fell down as if it had lost its power. Baiziahu was overjoyed, hugging Meng Meng. Success! How much magic energy have you absorbed, and has it become much stronger? Meng Meng looked like he was suffering from indigestion, and lay listlessly on Baiziahu's hand. Ugh! Chirp chirp chirp! Vomit! Baiziahu looked apologetic. Is the devil's energy here really so unpalatable? How about we change it? By the way, do you have to eat the devil's energy into your mouth when cultivating? Can't you use other parts to absorb it? The Meng Meng little devil chicken was completely stunned. It was a young chicken when it met Baiziahu, and no senior taught it how to practice before. It cultivated instinctively by eating monsters, and eating demonic energy. If it becomes stronger, can it absorb magic energy in other ways? The two looked at each other in blank dismay, both of which had lived for hundreds of years, but their common sense was extremely lacking, as if they were mentally retarded. Luye saw that the two started muttering again, communicating in an unknown language. Standing in the dark with his chest crossed and watching, his gaze shifted from the two to the zombie lying on the ground. Has this zombie been dealt with? No, no headshot, no additional body damage, it's not dead yet. The next moment, Luye narrowed his eyes, and saw that the zombie's body twitched, and suddenly stood up straight, and rushed towards the little girl. Immediately, thunder light gathered in his hand. Baiziahu heard a beast-like roar, and a foul-smelling wind hit him. Looking back, it was the walking corpse that had reached the ground after the magic energy was sucked away, jumped up again, and the magic on his body, the air is actually stronger than before. She was startled, seeing that the thing was about to catch her. The runes on her robes lit up, and a white light shot out from the runes, sending the devilish walking corpse flying away, and smashed against the wall fell down again. The thunder light in Luye's hand froze, and a look of surprise appeared on his usually cold and indifferent face. He couldn't see the white light, so the scene in front of him seemed even weirder. Then his expression slowly returned to calm, so it made sense, why this little girl was able to walk around outside dressed like this alone. Apart from having a strange pet bird, there was another mystery about her. After figuring out the reason, he had no intention of exploring the origin of the other party, and how many secrets he still had, so he turned around and wanted to leave. And Baiziahu over there was also very surprised. The monsters here can even bring themselves back to life? Wouldn't it turn into a pile of scum after being sucked out of magic energy? Worried that it would get up again, she quickly grabbed the hairband on her head and moved closer to it, trying to kill it completely. However, the demonic energy on the walking corpse was shattered by the vestment, and in Baiziahu's eyes, it completely revealed its true colors. When she took a closer look, what she saw was a rotting corpse with protruding yellow eyeballs and a torn mouth. Pus, a finger stuffed between the teeth, rotten skin and rotten flesh hanging on the face one after another, and bugs crawling around, such a smelly and terrible thing. She, Baiziahu, a nine-tailed white fox with a pure blood that surpasses all demons, a delicate baby who eats fairy energy and drinks spiritual water every day, is trapped in a dead house on Beishao Mountain for 500 years, and has never seen such a terrifying scene in her life. Lang Buting was hit Heaton, and was so frightened that he almost changed back to his original shape with a groan. In the end, the original shape did not change back, but the acid water in the stomach was still surging, and he squatted on the ground and retched. And the little devil chicken was also stunned, thinking that the magic energy it ate just now came out of such a thing. It also felt sick to its stomach, and couldn't help but spit out all the magic energy it ate, and vomited on the side. Luya had only walked a few steps, and when he heard the movement, he thought that something had happened, and immediately turned back, and what he saw was the miserable appearance of this person who was about to vomit, but didn't vomit anything. Luya looked at the rotting corpses lying on the ground, and seemed to understand something, but it was strange, why didn't they see them afraid of discomfort when flying the kite before? He hesitated for a moment, walked over, and took out a pack of tissues in his pocket. He didn't even take out a pack of tissues, so he handed over his empty hand, bending over as if to pull him up. If someone who knew him was here, their eyes would surely pop out of their sockets. I've never seen him be so patient with anyone. Sensing someone approaching, Baiziahu raised his face, staring at him in a daze with red eyes. The little girl's round fox eyes were wet, the eye sockets were red, and a few strands of hair stuck to her bloodless little face. She looked childish and pitiful, but also as beautiful as a painting. Luyasha's cold expression eased, and he passed his palm forward again. Get up. Baiziahu looked at his palms. Not long ago, it was these hands that sent out thunderbolts that could split people into charcoal. Baiziahu pursed his mouth, as if he was about to cry or not. She felt that she was miserable, really miserable. She only knew that walking corpses would not look good, but she didn't know that it was so scary, and why there was a terrifying human being who threw mines with his bare hands. She just came to find a tale. Brothers are right, the outside world is really scary. Baiziahu felt very sad, frustrated and confused. When she finished her confusion and saw the man's hand still in front of her eyes, she couldn't help wondering, what was he going to do? Look at this hand, then at herself, then at her hand, then at herself, there is nothing she can give him. She thought for a long time and made a movement. She slowly raised her hands and made a gesture of surrender, which meant, don't hit me. She was really afraid that the other party would not succeed in asking for bribes, so she suddenly beat herself with lightning. Luya looked at her for a while, then silently withdrew his hand. Baiziahu felt that although they were not the same species, she could understand the meaning in the other's eyes. His eyes seemed to say, are you stupid? The fox was a little unhappy, but he didn't dare to talk back, and he couldn't say what he came here. At this moment, the zombie that hit the ground began to show its presence again, and it started to move again. Luya raised his eyelids, and was about to release a thin thunderbolt to smash its head, but suddenly wanted to see what this little girl who didn't look very smart was going to do. Baiziahu was very grateful to the walking corpse for resolving the embarrassment, but he was also very angry. The dignified nine-tailed fox was frightened by a walking corpse and collapsed on the ground. If the news spread, would she still be a fox? You know, if she hadn't lost her tail, she would already be a nine-tailed celestial fox now, a serious fairy clan. Because the walking corpse was infested with demonic energy again, it turned into a black mass again, and she couldn't see its terrifying appearance clearly. She immediately felt relieved and wanted to pull off her hair tie to kill this guy, but thinking of the honor of the other party, what to do if her hair is dirty, look around, pick up a brick, and smash it hard at the walking corpse that is about to get up. Luya watched as she suddenly turned into a violent King Kong, and a brick smashed with 1,000 auras, but only the bodies of zombies were smashed. If it weren't for the fact that the zombie's attack would be blocked by something on her body, she would have been scarred countless times. The corner of Luya's mouth twitched, and he suddenly reminded, head. Baiziahu turned to look at him in surprise, and Luya pointed to his own head, it's only useful to attack the head. Ah! Oh! Baiziahu didn't understand but understood, and turned around to yell at the zombie's head. Facts have proved that the head of the first level zombie is quite easy to smash, probably already rotten. Bai Xiaohu felt that the zombie no longer struggled when it was hit. He stopped and saw that the demonic energy on the zombie's body gradually dissipated, and the head was already a lump mud. She quickly turned her head to stop looking at it, but was suddenly attracted by something again. Her eyes turned quietly, and there seemed to be something bright in the zombie's head, and at the same time, she felt a familiar breath. It's Reiki. That bright thing is exuding aura. Bai Xiaohu didn't care about being disgusted, so he pulled out the object with a brick lifter, wiped it on the ground, and held it up to look at the sun. This is a very round, oval, somewhat flat thing. The lavender is translucent, and looks a little cloudy, not very clear, but Bai Xiaohu is excited. There is a spiritual energy in this thing. She broke her tail and came to this world ravaged by demonic energy. She still has serious injuries from thunder disasters and forcibly crossing the world barrier. She can't even open the mustard space. I can't survive, but if I can get aura, everything will be completely different. She can practice and heal slowly, at least open the mustard space first, and hide in it when the time comes. There is spiritual energy in the mustard space, as well as spiritual springs and some spiritual fruits and plants in her collection. She had a big smile on her face. I don't dislike it at all. It was taken out of the head of the walking corpse, and I look at this thing like a baby. When Luye saw her seeing the crystal nucleus for the first time, it was rare for her to explain kindly, this is the crystal nucleus. Bai Xiaohu turned to look at him. Luye, people with supernatural powers can absorb this to gain energy. Bai Xiaohu blinked his eyes. Luye confirmed his guess, lowered his head and asked, "You don't understand what I'm saying." Bai Xiaohu didn't know what he was talking about, so he pursed his lips, not knowing how he should react, or would he make gestures with him and say that he didn't understand. But wouldn't that be silly? She thought about it, stood up and waved to him, and took 2 steps back. Luye was about to say something, but the thing on his waist vibrated. He picked it up, there was an incoming call. He glanced at Bai Xiaohu, picked it up, turned around and walked a few steps. Ying Miao. A gentle female voice came out, "Brother Lu, Zhuang Qingzai and the others have already received it." Luye said, "Okay, take them back to the base immediately." But Zhuang Qingzai said that they have a batch of supplies in a village not far from here. Don't worry about it, what are they going to do? After they enter the base, go and make troubles by yourself. Is this okay? After all, he is doing the transaction on behalf of the Heikan base. Because of this, the base should come forward. We are just hiring a team. Luye's tone was light, but there was no doubt about it. There was a pause. I see, when will you come back, brother Lu? Luye said, I still have something to do. After finishing speaking, he hung up directly, turned his head to see that a certain little girl was secretly looking at him, and when he looked over, he immediately lowered his head. When Luye was talking on the phone, Bai Xiaohu was indeed observing him quietly. Looking at him horizontally and vertically, he was indeed a human being with flesh and blood, and he didn't look very violent. Not like being hostile. She felt relieved, but couldn't help thinking, how could there be so many powerful thunder and lightning hidden in the flesh and blood? This world is indeed very magical. Seeing him take the black thing away from his ears and turn around to look over, she quickly lowered her head and continued to wipe the crystal nuclei in her hand with a piece of skirt, looking very busy. After wiping it a few times, the crystal nucleus became clean and brighter, but the skirt area where the crystal nucleus was rubbed was not dirty. In fact, she didn't splash any dirt on her body when she was mad at the zombie just now. All the dirt was bounced away by the runes, and the places where her skirt was stained with dust and a little blood were the places where the runes were damaged. Luye was silent for a while and said, I'm leaving, are you leaving? Bai Xiaohu looked at him silently. Luye also didn't know how to communicate, so he took a stone and wrote a few words on the wall, can you read? Bai Xiaohu looked at those words. Is this the words here? I don't know any of them. She guessed that the other party was asking what she meant by being illiterate, so she shook her head. Liu Ye had a rare headache. It was the first time he met someone who couldn't communicate with him at all. After thinking about it, he stretched out his hand. Let's go. He also made a gesture to go down the mountain. Bai Xiaohu looked at that hand. Did he ask himself to go with him? Bai Xiaohu was a little hesitant. She didn't understand anything when she first arrived. If the other party had good intentions for her, it would not be impossible to go with him. But she looked at the crystal nucleus in her hand, and shook her head secretly. What she has to do now is to find a place to absorb the aura in it quietly. As long as there is aura, as long as she recovers even a little cultivation, she will do whatever. Don't be afraid anymore, you don't need to rely on others at all. As for not being familiar with this world, when the time comes to find someone to perform a soul search, you will understand everything. So she shook her head at the man, thought for a while, and felt that the other party must have good intentions, so she straightened her hair and made a bow to him. The mortals in her world or the ghosts who cultivated human form seemed to use this to express gratitude and other etiquette. Liu Ye was slightly taken aback. Because of her actions, the flimsy and elegant long skirt covered the feet, and this action of the slender and beautiful girl gave him a slight sense of space-time disorder. After being stunned for a moment, he no longer forced himself, put down his hand, nodded slightly, turned and left. She was supposed to act alone. Judging from the performance just now, even though the girl and her pets seem not very smart, self-protection should be fine. Liu Ye has nothing to worry about. He is a stranger. I can't control that much. After turning these thoughts in his mind, Liu Ye still stopped. After hesitating for a moment, he still took off the pistol/gun he was carrying with him, gestured to the little girl standing quietly in the distance with the gun, and then opened the insurance to point at a girl. A shot was fired from a tree, and the small tree was cut off in the middle. Bai Xiaohu opened his eyes slightly. Immediately, Liu Ye gestured to her again, then put the gun on the ground, and put down a knife together, and then left. This time he walked quickly and decisively, and walked out of the factory in no time. Bai Xiaohu watched the tall and straight black figure disappear into the sun, flew out and stopped on the iron gate to have a look, then flew back to Jeju to tell her that he really left. Bai Xiaohu bent down to pick up the two things left by the man. She only glanced at the palm-length knife that was extremely sharp at first glance, but she looked at it carefully for a moment, imitating a man's manner, for the silver thing that was quite heavy and could be held in her hand. In her hand, there seemed to be a trace of warmth from the man, and she also shot at a small tree next to the broken tree. As a result, the arm trembled from the shock of the recoil, and the bullet emptied, not even hitting a leaf. But Bai Xiaohu also experienced the power of this thing, and felt that it was quite useful. Her eyes lit up, she touched the gun like a toy, and looked in the direction where the man left, feeling a little happy in her heart. This is the first time someone gave her something. Well, she announced that the male human is not very scary anymore, and if there is a chance in the future, maybe he can get to know him. Then she turned her head and saw the scorched black zombies lying on the ground. Because they were dead, the demonic energy had dissipated, and they were all very real in front of her eyes, impacting her eyeballs and nerves. She covered her eyes and waved to Meng Meng, "Come on, let's find a place, I'll try to absorb the spiritual energy. Let's separate for a while, Xiaohu also needs to develop himself first, otherwise he will really be a not-so-smart Yazi all the time." 3. The place Bai Xiaohu found was on the hillside going up from the factory, in a small piece of woods. She was more comfortable in the woods than in the house. Meng Meng flew around to protect her. She held the crystal nucleus for a while. Put it in the palm of your hand, cover it with spiritual consciousness, try to absorb the spiritual energy in it. As soon as she penetrated her spiritual consciousness, she found that the spiritual energy in it was very heterogeneous. The spiritual energy was sparse and disordered, full of various impurities, which made her feel a little uncomfortable. She vaguely felt the feeling of eating bad magic energy. To her, the aura in the core is like a small edible fruit that has fallen into a pile of poisonous and inedible fruits, and it takes her a lot of effort to pick out the edible fruit. But it's impossible not to choose, because if she doesn't eat this fruit, she may starve to death. She filtered out those impurities bit by bit, and extracted the traces of spiritual energy in a painstaking manner, and it took a lot of time to absorb all the spiritual energy. Meng Meng flew over and asked her how she was. Did she become much stronger? Bai Xiaohu smiled wryly. It's a drop in the bucket, but it's better than nothing, just save more. Thinking of something, she said with bright eyes, aren't there still a lot of walking corpses over there? What, can it be called a spiritual core? Let's dig it out. One person and one bird ran back to take a look. Wow, there are hundreds of them lying on the ground, if not 1,000, they have been lying down for as long as Bai Xiaohu has absorbed them, and they have been exposed to the sun until they emit a foul smell. Bai Xiaohu used all the spiritual energy he had just absorbed to close his sense of smell, and resigned himself to digging out the brains of these guys together with Meng Meng. 1, 2, 3. She used the small knife left by Liu Li. This knife is really sharp. With a pry, a brain is broken. It was uncomfortable to do this, so Bai Xiaohu hypnotized himself that what she dug was not heads, but large nuts. The sun was gradually setting to the west, and before sunset, the two of them finally dug out the brains of all the walking corpses, and collected a large bag of spiritual cores, which jingled in their hands. Carrying such a bag of things, she returned to the original place on the mountain and seized the time to absorb the spiritual energy. Strange to say, the colors of these spirit cores are actually different: red, blue, white, and gold. Different colors of spirit cores contain different factors in the spirit energy contained in them. Bai Xiaohu can't make trouble. Knowing what it was filtered out as impurities anyway, and the aura she absorbed in the end was invisible, colorless, and pure enough. It is precisely because of this that the spiritual energy she can obtain from each spiritual core is very limited, not to mention that some spiritual cores are extremely small and thin as if they are stunted. She practiced with the absorption belt for a full day and 2 nights. During the period, there were not many walking corpses approaching, but there were not many of them, and they were all dealt with by Meng Meng. The little devil chicken also forced himself to absorb some magic energy, which was barely stronger. When the last spiritual core shattered in her hands, she finally opened her eyes. The little magic chicken standing on the tree also opened its eyes, and called out chirping. Bai Xiaohu stood up with a smile, stretched his waist, and hugged the little devil chicken from the tree. The results are good. These hundreds of spiritual cores have provided me with a lot of spiritual energy, but I was injured too badly. These Reiki is not enough at all, but it is enough for self-protection for the time being. Little demon chicken, chirp, chirp, chirp. Bai Xiaohu showed a sad face. You said the mustard space, I don't know if it broke the boundary, and the mustard space was also affected, and it couldn't be opened. Hearing what she said, the fluff of the little devil chicken drooped. Bai Xiaohu suddenly laughed. I'm lying to you, let's see what it is. She flipped her hand, and there were 2 bright red fruits the size of a baby's fist in her hand. The brilliance circulates, and as soon as it appears, it emits a quiet and sweet fragrance, which is obviously not ordinary. In fact, this is a kind of fairy fruit, without a name. It is called Hungwakuo by Bai Xiaohu. It has a little healing effect, but it is usually eaten as a snack by her and the little magic chicken. Bai Xiaohu put a fruit in front of Meng Meng's mouth, and it immediately jumped on her forearm happily to peck at it, while Bai Xiaohu took the other one and gnawed, saying, "But I didn't lie to you, there is a real problem with the space. I can only take things of this size from the inside at present, no matter how big it is, I can't get it out, and we can't get in from the outside." She said that she was a little worried. Her mustard seeds have a huge space. It can be said that it is a small world of its own. It was refined for her by her parents and brothers. Her belongings are all in it. I don't have many belongings to take care of the space, but it is still very inconvenient without the mustard space. For example, she really wanted to jump into the spiritual spring inside to take a bath, but she couldn't get in. The cassock was damaged, and she couldn't get a new one out of it to wear. After eating a fruit, the aura in the flesh also penetrated into the body, bringing a healing effect to Bai Xiaohu's injury that is better than nothing. Compared with healing, Bai Xiaohu prefers to feel comfortable when the aura enters the body. I feel that the aura in my mustard space is pure and pure. I don't know what's going on. In the past hundreds of years, she never felt hungry. She ate purely because her mouth was hungry sometimes, but when she came here, after 2 days and 1 night, she was very hungry. She sat on the ground and continued to eat the fruit from the mustard space. She ate one with the little devil chicken like this, but soon found that the fruit was delicious, sweet and sour, crunchy and juicy. Reiki, but how come you are not full? She touched her belly, and then touched it again, to confirm that the hunger still persisted, and she was a little dumbfounded. But there are only similar fruits in her mustard space, and there are some birds, beasts, and fishes, but she can't catch any living things at the moment. She grabbed other fairy fruits of similar size from the mustard space and gnawed on them. She even grabbed a water polo from the spiritual spring and sucked it into her mouth, but it couldn't fill her stomach. She and the little devil chicken looked at each other, and they both saw the hunger in each other's eyes. She scratched her hair and scratched her face. Well, it seems that we still have to go down the mountain to find something to eat. I don't know if the human food here can fill them up, so I can only try now. So the two who were leisurely a moment ago, immediately set out on the road hungry. And after they left the hillside, someone came over. There were 3 men and 2 women who came, with green belts tied on their sleeves, which meant that their task today was to be cleaners. As the name suggests, they were to clean up the corpses around the base, zombies, humans, and animals. Everything they saw would be completely burned, to avoid long-term exposure to breed germs and the like. This kind of mission is available every day in the Mercenary Association of Zhongcheng Base, and there is no limit to the number of people and the number of times to receive it. You can take a photo when you see the corpse, and take a photo after it is incinerated. Hi, it is usually done by people who come out to search for supplies or do other tasks. But the main task of this group of people today is to clean up. This is because they heard that there are many zombies inside and outside the abandoned factory on the hillside, and the crystal nuclei should still be there. This group of 5 people, all with weapons in their hands and waists, went up the mountain with a vigilant expression. When they saw that there were indeed only zombie corpses all over the ground, they showed relaxed expressions. It looks like these zombies were all killed by lightning. Captain Lu did it, right? As expected of Captain Lu, he killed so many zombies by himself. Hey, why has the zombie's head been dug out? Didn't it mean that no one should have touched it? It's really unlucky, it's a waste of time. They spoke disappointedly and angrily. They were annoyed that they believed the false news. They entered the factory with the last hope and searched for it. But they didn't find a hair. I don't know how many times they have been raided here. It's so clean. So the 5 people became even more angry. Holding their breath, they piled up the corpses, lit a fire, took pictures, and went down the mountain without waiting for the burning to finish. Among them was a skinny, short-haired man who told the others that he had other things to do, so he parted ways with the 4 of them, and after the 4 of them were out of sight, he dialed a number. Miss Ying, it's me, it's me. Just here at Qiushan, nothing was found, no living people, and no women in white dresses, but the corpses of the zombies here have been dug out their crystal nuclei. Okay, I know, I will never say anything about it of. Zhongcheng Base, Zhongyang employs a team. A short-haired woman looked at the improved version of the communication phone in her hand, and her eyes were slightly deep. A boy with green hair, like a green chicken, passed by and asked, "Sister Ying, what are you doing? Is there any important news?" The woman turned her head and smiled, "It's nothing, I'm just thinking about something." The woman has a bright and majestic face, her short hair is trimmed to the earlobe, and she has a beautiful shape, which looks very capable. She is wearing a black tight combat suit, the material has a leather texture, and there is a red stripe on the arms and legs, immediately became a bit more individual, and looked dazzling. This is obviously a very outstanding woman. She looked at the boy and suddenly said, "By the way, Xiaogu, brother Lu gave away his gun. I want to get him a new one. Do you know the model number?" The young Pangu was stunned for a moment, and his astonishment was palpable. Did the boss give away his gun? Although he has never seen him use that gun, he never leaves it. He would take it out and wipe it often. He attaches great importance to it. Why did you give it away? Who did you give it to? Ying Miao sighed, I was also surprised. I asked him who he gave it to, and he casually said it was given to a little girl. Pangu almost spit. Although he wasn't drinking water, he wanted to spit, so he hurried over with a gossip. Really? Boss said it himself? Hey, what kind of girl, is Tisha going to flowering? Ying Miao's smile froze, and a sullen look flashed in her eyes, not because the other party said that Lu Ye was an iron tree, but, standing here, don't these people think that it is possible for them to be with Lu Ye? She seemed to say unintentionally, it should be a girl that Zhuang Qingzhe and those people met before. Hearing the name Zhuang Qingzhe, Pangu unabashedly showed displeasure, curled his lips and said, that guy, he's still stuck in the base, and comes to us every day to block the boss. What a big face, what a shame. You can recognize relatives if you have a blood relationship, and you don't want to think that it was their dealer who abandoned the boss first. Ying Miao listened with a smile, and then brought the topic back. It's strange to say, I asked Zhuang Qingzhe, and those people didn't know how that girl appeared, and they just mixed in among them in a daze, dressed in the same clothes. It's weird, it's so weird. Pangu shrugged, maybe it's because they have bad eyesight and didn't notice it at first. Compared to this, he was more concerned, is that girl beautiful? What does she look like? How old is she? Where is she now? Ying Miao smiled and said, I don't know either. I didn't see that girl that day, so she probably stayed on the mountain. Pangu frowned, stay on the mountain? Why didn't you come to the base? I didn't hear the boss mention it. I'll go find the boss. After saying that, he ran away. Ying Miao looked at his back with cold eyes. Obviously she was also the veteran of the Zhongyang team, and the Zhongyang team was still named after her own brother, but she didn't feel how much status she had in the team, at least the people who came in didn't pay much attention to her. She knew that the big reason was that her own strength was indeed slightly insufficient, but there was another very important reason that Lu Ye had more respect for her than she was close to her. All the members of the team were capable, except for Lu Ye, the captain, and Wen Liansheng. The vice-captain didn't accept anyone at all. So in the past few months, she has been trying to get closer to Lu Ye, and even become his partner. However, she hadn't made any progress yet, but she killed a person halfway. Judging from what Zhuang Qingzhe and others said, when Lu Ye stayed on the mountain that day, he was with that girl, and when Lu Ye came back, the gun that he had on his body when he went out disappeared. Combined with his own statement, it must be gave it to that girl. What kind of person made him send something so important to him the first time they met? She once tested how dangerous it would be to let her be alone outside the base if she was a little girl. Lu Ye's reaction was to show a somewhat strange expression, as if thinking of something, and there seemed to be a little smile in his eyes, but I didn't say much. I don't know if I don't want to talk about it, or I don't want to mention each other to others. Lu Ye has always been reticent, and she couldn't figure out what he meant, but she could feel that something was wrong everywhere. Even Lu Ye didn't go out as usual, and when he came back, he was hung up on how many zombies he made. Let people go to clean up the task. Ming Ming Zhuang Qingzai said that he killed a lot of zombies on the Ball Mountain. Ying Miao waited and watched for 2 days, but still couldn't hold back, and sent someone to Qiushan to investigate in the name of cleaning up, to see if the person was still there. The news he got was that the person was gone, and the crystal nucleus was gone. The corpse of the zombie is not allowed to be moved. Is it really left for the girl to get the crystal nucleus? But obviously, if he wanted to send crystal nuclei, he could get as much as he wanted. Bai Xiaohu didn't know that someone was entangled with her. She walked down the hill and set foot in this human world, keeping her curious eyes open the whole time. The houses here are so strange. The road here is so wide and smooth. Why do the trees here grow neatly? Are they artificially planted? Hey, why are those people fighting and killing? Are they robbing something? Ah, there is a faint black mist behind those houses. Are there any walking corpses there? Hey! Another walking corpse jumped out. The speed was so fast, it was obviously a very powerful walking corpse, and it could fly. A lot of people fought around it. Very well, the humans won the battle, and like her, they smashed open the corpse's head and took out the spirit core, which was obviously more powerful than the spirit energy they had dug. Bai Xiaohu thought about it while hearing. It seems that the stronger the walking corpse here, the stronger the spiritual core in the brain, and the reason why the walking corpse is covered with magic energy is probably because there is a spiritual core in the head, so just break it up. The magic energy in the body is useless, it must be attacked on the head. As for why the spiritual core, which obviously contains aura, was placed in the heads of the walking corpses, but it provided them with demonic energy, Bai Xiaohu didn't understand. In her cognition, spiritual energy and demonic energy were two different things. How can things be transformed? But what she cares more about is when will she find something to eat. She turned around and walked to a desolate street. There were houses on both sides of the street, and the doors and windows, glass, on the first floor were smashed like glazed glass. The inside looked like it had been looted countless times. It looked extremely miserable. No matter inside or outside the house, on the walls or on the ground, there are many dried black bloodstains. She thought about it, and went in one by one, sometimes touching a naked humanoid object, a model in a clothing store, sometimes pinching a soft and strangely shaped piglet, doll pillow, on the shelf, and sometimes smelling at a bottle, shower gel, that was trampled on and a lot of viscous liquid flowed out. She was like a curious baby. She looked here and there, and finally found a bag in the corner of a room. She picked it up and held it in her hand. It was a bit heavy. When she opened it, it was white inside. It seemed to be salt. Well, salt doesn't fill you up either. Just about to throw away the salt bag, there was a sound of footsteps outside, and 4 people surrounded the door. At a glance, they were tall and short, all of them were thin and dirty, with tangled hair and stubble, and dirty stains on their bodies. Less dust and blood, either holding a knife or a gun in his hand. Bai Xiaohu swept over their attire and landed on their faces, and found that each of them had very ugly expressions. Their eyes were shining brightly, their faces were contorted, and they were still sucking saliva. One of them hurriedly approached. What a monster! Little beauty! Another said, I'm not wrong, I just saw this girl and I was dumbfounded. Another one smiled at Bai Xiaohu, little sister, you are alone, come and play with your brothers, they will protect you. Another said, don't take it too lightly, a woman who appears alone must have something to rely on. The first person who approached Bai Xiaohu couldn't bear it anymore, his eyes lit up and his expression was fierce, damn it, it can make me feel better, and I'm willing to die immediately. As he said that, he rushed towards Bai Xiaohu in the past. I wanted to strike first. Bai Xiaohu couldn't understand a word, only heard them chirping, and then one of them rushed over, with that look in his eyes and that expression. It was not a good thing at first sight, not to mention that he was so dirty. Bai Xiaohu, can I get her clothes? She turned around and dodged it. The man jumped at nothing, wiped his mouth and cursed something, then grabbed her again. Bai Xiaohu got a little annoyed, so she didn't hold back her hands this time. She grabbed a chair next to her, and just like slapping annoying flying insects, she slapped people away with a bang. This shot is a literal shot. I saw this guy who was at least 1.7 meters tall, with a medium build and a heavy backpack on his back, just soared into the air, and was shot into the wall by Pia, embedded. It was so hard that it couldn't fall off, only the blood remained. The others were shocked, and Bai Xiaohu was also taken aback. Looking at the guy who fainted in an instant, he was a little panicked. Why can't this guy beat him so much? She looked at the crumbling chair in her hand, and hurriedly threw it away, still a little confused. She really has only recovered so much of her cultivation base, which seems very weak to her. After all, when she first came to this world, she met a fierce man who could strike thunder with his bare hands. When she thought about that scene, she felt the bones of the body are very painful, and I feel particularly insecure. Unexpectedly, in the blink of an eye, she met someone who was as weak as paper, and she only mobilized a little spiritual energy. She looked at the other people, and the other party also took his eyes off his hapless companion on the wall with difficulty, and cast his eyes on Bai Xiaohu. If a different man showed the terrible power of such a chair to shoot a trapeze, these people would be fucked. However, Bai Xiaohu's appearance is too deceptive, especially at the moment. She still shows a little confused expression, as if even she herself is surprised that she has such great strength, which gives people a feeling that she is actually performing supernormally, but in reality she is not so strong. Illusion. So one of the remaining three shouted, "The wall is covered with foam, and it's not a concrete wall. This little girl isn't that difficult to deal with. Let's all get on with her, and we'll fix her together." So they all rushed up. Bai Xiaohu frowned, but she didn't dare to punch, so she grabbed a handful of salt and threw it out. The people on the other side were taken aback, thinking she had spilled something, but when they saw it was table salt, they all laughed, thinking that this woman must be out of her mind, so they sprinkled salt at this time. But the next moment, their expressions froze. Because Bai Xiaohu immediately raised his hand. The cuffs of the cassock skirt were wide, flowing and immortal. With just a wave of her hand, the sleeves drew a graceful arc, and the snow-white salt swept towards them seemed to be manipulated by an invisible big hand, and the difference was immediately distinguished. Trajectory, shot straight into their eyes. Before they had time to react, the salt grains were shot into the eyes with extremely fast speed and extraordinary strength. At that moment, it was salty, painful, stinging, and hot, as if they had been impacted deeply into the soul. Indescribably sour. Think about the feeling of eyes being covered with sand, think about the feeling of being soaked in strong salt water in the wound, think about the sourness of pepper water splashing into the eyes, and think about the bewildered feeling of being hit on the head. Combined, it's pretty much how they feel. One by one was immediately brought to the ground by the force of the grains of salt, and one by one they covered their eyes and howled miserably, blood pouring down from their fingers. It was extremely miserable. Bai Xiaohu was dumbfounded again. She just waved her sleeve lightly. "Do you want to be so exaggerated?" She watched their performance for a while, and there was no fluctuation in her heart, no sympathy at all. In her cognition, there is a very profound law, that is, the first to flirt is the cheapest. The second brother told her, but whoever offends others first, if it's on her head, then it's not inappropriate for her to fight back. She suddenly thought of something, and turned her head to look at the unconscious one who was embedded in the wall. Now that the opportunity is presented to us, it would be a pity not to grasp it. She walked over and stood in front of this guy. Although she was a little disgusted, she still closed her eyes, concentrated her consciousness, mobilized the spiritual energy absorbed from hundreds of spiritual cores, pinched a spell with her fingers, and then opened her eyes. The originally black eyes turned blue on the left and red on the right. The blue eyes were seductive, and the red eyes were violent like fire. The next moment, the red eyes trembled, and turned into a faint blue color like the left eye, so beautiful that it seemed to have a soul-stirring power. Then she put together and tapped on the man's forehead. Soul Search. By Xiaohu, the Soul Search technique is activated. Hey, the quality of the Soul Search object is too low, too much waste, with an accent, and half illiterate lu yet, he see you again in the next chapter. Bai Xiaohu's parents are both nine-tailed white foxes, but there are more detailed divisions among the nine-tailed white foxes. Her father is a super fierce war fox, with a pair of red eyes that seem to be burning with flames all the time, very violent, aggressive by nature, a bit stubborn in his mind, and he is so big that he doesn't fit a fox aesthetics. So much so that he couldn't find a wife at his age, if he hadn't met Bai Xiaohu's mother by chance, and just happened to meet Bai's mother's appetite, he might have been a bachelor for the rest of his life. And Bai Xiaohu's mother is a petite, beautiful fox in both fox shape and human nature. She has a pair of lake-like blue eyes and is very intelligent. She doesn't like to fight and kill, and she is gentle, but the charm talent in the blood is stronger than many brutal and violent methods. At least the three children knew that their mother was actually more lethal than their father. Compared with the eldest brother who inherited the talent of his father and the second brother who inherited the talent of his mother, Bai Xiaohu inherited the talent of both parents at the same time, capable of both violent output and charming people's hearts. But in the words of the second brother, the two conflicted a bit. His sister was born with a bad brain, and she was even more stupid when she was rushed like this, and then the talents on both sides were also washed out to a bit mediocre. Bai Xiaohu is not convinced that she is a bit stupid, but she is indeed the weakest of the three siblings, but she also has her own little wisdom. The 500 years of confinement on Beishao Mountain is not for Begwan, so she figured out a way, can briefly enter the super explosive state. For example, when the situation is very critical, very angry, and needs to fight hard, she can transform the ability representing the bloodline of the charm fox in her body into the ability of the bloodline of the war fox. At that time, her blue eyes will turn into red eyes, making her repair to raise a level. Vice versa. When resisting the last thunder, she used the powerful fighting fox talent inherited from her father, otherwise it would not be as simple as losing her tail, but now she uses the charm fox talent from her mother. The soul search technique is something that Maihu is almost born with. As soon as Bai Xiaohu's finger touched the man's brow, a series of memories flooded into her sea of consciousness like a tide. After a while, Bai Xiaohu's face turned green, and he retracted his fingers, showing the same indigestion expression as the little devil chicken. The little devil chicken hurriedly asked, "Jujuju. How is it?" Bai Xiaohu covered his head, "A lot of messy things. Most of them are eating and drinking, and then they are secretly hiding in the dark to plot, harm, and bully women. The strongest emotion is jealousy, jealousy of people who are stronger than themselves, jealousy people who live better than themselves dream of reaching the sky one day and so on." Bai Xiaohu's head is swollen. What the is this? I feel like I ate a stomach full of waste and couldn't even spit it out. No wonder my mother said that the target of the soul search technique should be careful, otherwise you will only get a pile of waste and choke yourself to death. Beneath the scrap, though, is something useful. For example, she knew that the world was not like this half a year ago. At that time, the world was generally peaceful, and people lived and worked step by step. Suddenly, one day, a misty black air appeared in broad daylight, and the world fell into darkness. Many communication tools, electricity, etc., were all paralyzed. People were terrified and helpless, guessing, and there were many chaos. It took a long time for the black air in the sky to dissipate, but many people fell into a coma. Some people woke up, some of them became supernatural beings, and some of them turned into walking corpses. Oh, the people here are called zombies. Zombies are no longer living people. They bite people when they see them, and they will be attracted by the smell of living people. They will infect the living people and turn them into zombies. The world is in chaos for a while, and the population has decreased sharply. After the country reacts, it immediately kills, set up a safe base in the local area, and the whole people resist zombies. And now half a year has passed, with the awakening of batches of supernatural beings and the continuous evolution of zombies. Some bases have grown, some have perished, some have merged, and some have split. People fight against zombies, and they also fight against themselves, because various survival resources are gradually depleted and scarce, and productivity has not recovered, because some people wake up overnight, become extremely powerful, and disobey the former managers. In short, chaos is everywhere. Baiziahu opened his eyes, and his expression became a little strange. It turned out that the reason why the man in black was able to emit lightning was because he was a supernatural being. And there are many kinds of supernatural beings. Those who set fire, water, and metal are even more miraculous than monks in the world of cultivating immortals. Cultivators also need to activate spells, but supernatural beings can release them with a single thought. She continued to search for useful things in the information she obtained, and sat down while holding on to the shelf beside her. After performing the soul search technique, the aura she had finally accumulated was consumed a lot, and she quickly grabbed the aura. If you gnaw, after gnawing one, you spit out the core and continue to gnaw the next one, trying to replenish your aura, and feel even hungrier at the same time. She was searching in her mind what the food in this world looked like, and where it would be easier to find food. Then I searched and searched. Hey, these 4 people seem to have something to eat in their backpacks. After a while, the 3 backpacks that Baiziahu on the wall didn't bother to drag him down to get his bag were all searched by Baiziahu. The smell in this bag is really bad. What a mess. There are dirty clothes, gauze, knives, keys, shriveled cigarettes, water, some food, some crystal nuclei, and some random things. Baiziahu didn't even bother to turn over to the back, and confiscated all the crystal nuclei without any politeness, and then looked at the few edible things that were found. A package of instant noodles, all broken into inside, a package of meat strips wrapped in oil paper, roasted black and dry, with a smoky smell, half-eaten canned luncheon meat. She doesn't want to read the rest. Just these few foods that the man on the wall remembers are more delicious, more popular, and treasured by many people. When she looks at them, she loses her appetite. The food that humans eat here after the end of the world, it's too bad, right? In the end, she reluctantly took a pack of instant noodles that had not been opened. She didn't want anything else, so she left with the instant noodles. No one dared to stop her, and the 3 people whose eyes were blinded by salt sat tremblingly by the wall, with blood and tears streaming down their faces, almost crying when they heard her leave. They have never seen such a weird woman, and they don't even know how she managed to disable their eyes with salt. Hearing that the person should have left, they immediately supported each other, anxiously wanting to find a doctor or a healing-type supernatural being to see if their eyes could be saved, but before they could go out, they huffed again. A group of people came. It's them, bullying a girl, I saw it from a distance. A girl leading the way shouted. There were more than a dozen men and women who came, all wearing the same style of clothes with a black background and a sun pattern printed on the chest, and a black translucent gel coat that reached to the thighs outside, which looked very attractive. Momentum. If the 3 people's eyes were still good, they would be able to recognize that they were members of Zhang Guiyang's team, the first hiring team in the Zhongcheng base. They are generally in their teens to 20s, but they are all murderous. The leader is a boy with green hair streaked with shit. When they heard someone bullying a girl, they happened to be nearby, so they rushed over immediately. Stepping into this pre-apocalyptic convenience store, you will be stunned. What did they see? 3 men who seemed to have been poked blind, and a man who was directly embedded in the wall, sleeping peacefully in a very ecstasy position. This is the who is said to be full of evil, who has been robbing lonely people and harassing women nearby recently, and surrounded a little girl who was alone just now? The boy with shit green hair, that is, the girl Pan Gyuan led the way. Are you talking about these people? The girl who led the way was not from Song Gyang's team. She was wearing a ponytail and carrying a bag. She looked very neat, and she was a little confused at the moment. It's them. Then she said happily, is there someone who can't see them? Hey, where was the girl just now, was she rescued? She asked 3 guys. The 3 of them shook their heads in horror, saying that they didn't need someone to save them, they were all repaired by her personally, and said that they knew their mistakes, and begged them to take them back to the base to find a doctor. Pangu raised his eyebrows, but he didn't doubt it. How can a person who dares to act alone, especially a woman, be weak and bully? He also asked curiously, what does that girl look like? Images of such strong women in the base who dared to act alone flashed in his mind. The 3 trembled and said, wearing a white dress, with very long hair and a hairy rope wrapped around it. Pangu's eyes brightened the more he listened. Hey, why is this description so familiar? He went to the boss not long ago, wanting to ask about hand delivery and guns, but naturally he didn't ask a single hair. Just in time, a small team said that they encountered a 4th-level zombie outside, so he was sent out. It was urgent, but he found another way to find out in private, and he knew the image of the unknown girl with the gun. I fell in love as soon as I heard it, and I thought it couldn't be such a coincidence, right? He asked again, isn't she very beautiful? She looks quite young and obedient, wearing a dress like an ancient costume. The 3 of them nodded again and again. If they didn't look so small and obedient and easy to bully, they wouldn't dare to do anything wrong. Pangu thought to himself that he didn't run away. Looking at the miserable appearance of these 3 people, and looking at the one hanging on the wall, I couldn't help but admire secretly, this young lady is capable and has a big temper, she deserves to be the one who can be given a gun by their boss. He immediately took a photo and posted it in the group. At this moment, the mobile phone is unusable, but after the local area network is repaired, the improved mobile phone can still restore certain functions, and it is also possible to use a small software to create a group. As the number 1 mercenary team in Zhongcheng, the Zhongyang team has always been rich and powerful. Whether it is improving mobile phones or access to the internet, the logistics side has made proper arrangements, so chatting and spanking in the group chat in spare time has become the team members' choice. Way of pastime. There is no boss to rest assured of the high group. Panan is not as handsome as me, picture.jpg Panan is not as handsome as me, take a look, is this handsome? Goldfish, little pansy, who messed with you again? Throwing everyone over the wall? Shuang Muchinglin, by the way, does this person look familiar? Now Itao, Wang Bin, there is a photo of this person in the taskbar in the hall. He and 3 other accomplices did many bad things. They are called the 4 little devils of the Yellow River. Jinyu, yo, Lao Wan, you are well informed, you know all about this, but when did you take on this kind of task, little pansy? Panan is not as handsome as I am, I didn't do it, but a young lady did it for the heavens. Goldfish, there is a story. Shuang Muchinglin, come on, tell me, if you're being tricked like this, then what kind of young lady has a background? Pangu smiled, and said to the people around him while typing, tie them all up, they all have a lot of criminal records, take them back later. Panan is not as handsome as I am, now I have to talk about something, do you know that the boss's gun is missing? Jinyu, bold, dare to openly insult the boss, wait for me to report this matter quickly, Xiao Panzi, you wait to die. 2 trees form a forest, how can you doubt the boss's glory? Beizai wants to eat meat, I'll go, as soon as I come in, I will catch up with such a hot topic. Hey. Add more. Pangu almost dropped his phone, wanting to beat these to death. Panan is not as handsome as me, I'm talking about the silver pistol and gun that the boss always carries around. Goldfish, cut 2 trees form a forest, cut buns need to eat meat, cut Beizai wants to eat meat, anyway, the screenshot has been taken, and the evidence is in hand, no one can deny it. Pangu was furious. Still Now Ital came out to answer the call. Now Ital, speaking of which, I didn't seem to see it yesterday. I heard from Ms. Sanshui that I gave it away. Panan is not as handsome as I am, you know this old one, so do you know who the gift is for? Now Ital, it's a lady. Goldfish, how do you know? Now Ital, just look at the reaction of Ms. Sanshui. Goldfish, yo 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 yo. Why don't I know such breaking news? Who is that woman? Shuang Muchenglin, I seem to understand, is that woman the same lady who put Wang Bin on the wall? Panan is not as handsome as I am, I guess so, the appearance, characteristics and clothing are all the same. Goldfish, you have a bad temper, okay. Pangu took another photo of the three guys. Panan is not as handsome as me, picture.jpg Panan is not as handsome as me, look at this again, it is said that the young lady used a handful of salt to make them like this, isn't it awesome? Goldfish, salt? This is impossible, right? How did you do it, are your eyes blind? Pangu asked how the three were injured while typing in the group, and told the story. Goldfish, damn, this is using the salt as a hidden weapon. What is the origin of the young lady? Shuang Muchenglin, the skill is amazing, the young lady is not a master of martial arts, is she? When, mental power. Suddenly such a sentence popped up in the chatting group, and everyone was stunned for a moment, just like elementary school students who were fighting in the classroom were suddenly caught by the head teacher, and they all pretended to be dead. Pangu bit the bullet and typed carefully. Panan is not as handsome as I am, brother Wen, you are here too. When, I happen to be free, the group is very lively. Seeing this sentence, everyone else erupted as if they were alive. Goldfish, hello Vancouver. Now Ital, hello, Team Wen. Two trees form a forest, good afternoon, Vancouver. Bayazai wants meat, hello, brother Wen. Goldfish, brother Wen, what do you mean, that young lady is supposed to use mental power to manipulate salt grains to hurt people? Wen recovers quickly, very likely. Pangu took a deep breath. If that's the case, he's really a genius. Mental power is a very new concept. It was only rumored in the base last month that there was a person in the big base in the north who could use spiritual power to control things. People, the transmission is very magical. Goldfish, damn, the mental power is said to be very mysterious, and it can control objects through the air. It's too bad. I kind of want to see myself. As for people, Pansy I can take a picture too. Panan is not as handsome as I am, he has already left. When, the blood doesn't seem to have dried up, so the person hasn't gone far, right? Pangu slapped his head, yes, the person should not have gone far nearby. Hey, you three, did that girl just leave? The three people who had been replied that they had just left not long ago. Pangu immediately wanted to go out to find someone, but he didn't see another message popping up in the group. When, I will pay attention to this matter. Xiaogu should not play with his mobile phone outside, and pay attention to the movement around him. But he didn't need to look at it, because as soon as he stepped out of the door, he felt that something was wrong. On the street corner not far ahead, a whirlwind appeared out of thin air, and fallen leaves and lighter garbage were swept up and whirled. In the base Zhongyang squad camp. A man put down his mobile phone, pushed the wheelchair under him and turned around. This is a pale but elegant man, but unfortunately there is nothing below the knees, obviously a disabled person. When he came to the stairs blocked his way, but he suddenly stretched out his hands, and two vines suddenly shot out, wrapping around the railing downstairs, and with the help of the vines, he lifted himself and the wheelchair up together, landing lightly. The whole movement is very easy, obviously strong. In the lounge area next to the hall, at the long table next to the floor-to-ceiling windows, a man in black was sitting here, turning on the improved computer in front of him, looking at the picture on it, wondering what he was thinking. And next to the computer lay a sizable white cat with light grey leather stripes on its back. The white cat was taking a nap, swinging its big tail lazily, sometimes rubbing against the man's wrist, and the man would raise his hand to stroke it from time to time. Click it. When Liancheng's wheelchair rolled over, the man glanced at him sideways. It was Liu Ye. Compared with the day outside, Liu Ye is now dressed in black, but it is not a combat uniform. The collar buttons of the shirt are undone, and the cuffs are also rolled up, revealing the muscular forearm, and the slightly loose pants are in the sitting position. Under the circumstances, it also faintly outlines the outline of strong thighs. Wen Liancheng smiled and said, "What are you looking at?" Liu Ye turned the screen over. It was a simple electronic map of Zhongcheng. There was a red dot flashing once and for all. To be precise, it flashed here and there. Wen Liancheng understood at a glance, it's the place where zombies from the space system haunted. That's right. Liu Ye picked up the cup and took a sip. There is no trace of its appearance, but the previous speculation is correct. The more places where the supernatural beings gather, the higher the probability of it appearing. Combined with 44 there are recorded cases of attacks. I calculated, 5 people with supernatural powers should be the critical value, and less than 3 people with supernatural powers is the safe range. Wen Liancheng said, "No wonder you don't allow everyone to act collectively these days. You won't arrange more than 3 supernatural beings in the mission team. Are you going to do it yourself?" "Well," Liu Ye said while packing up the computer, "zombies in this space are hard to guard against, the sooner they get rid of them, the better." Watching his movements, Wen Liancheng suddenly said, Liu, do you really plan to keep doing this forever?" Liu Ye paused and looked at him. Wen Liancheng, just guarding a mercenary squad all the time, are you content with this size and the status quo? Liu Ye looked out of the glass window and saw the 2 osmanthus trees bathed in the sun in the yard. The place is quiet and peaceful, and he can't feel the apocalypse at all. He said lightly, "Otherwise, go grab the position of the leader of the base, or even fight for the king. Is it a hegemony? Does it make sense?" Wen Liancheng shook his head, "You used to be, not like this. Before the end of the world, you were very aggressive in everything you did, but after the end of the world, you seem to have changed. I'm not saying that it's not good now, but you shouldn't stop here. How many people in the base I'm afraid of you, secretly making trouble, but as long as you go to the highest position, all voices will disappear." Wen Liancheng looked at his legs, "I know, Zhongyang's death has hit you hard, and my legs. It has nothing to do with you." Liu Ye interrupted him with a low voice, "I regret Zhongyang's death, but I disagreed with him before he died. I won't stay here. If it's not to commemorate him, this Zhongyang team won't exist, and I'll probably find a deserted place to stop seeing what's happening in this world." Wen Liancheng frowned handsomely, "I don't understand, why do you have such an idea of escaping? The current world is the time when people like you are needed." Who would have known that Liu Ye, regarded as the #1 expert in Zhongcheng, had such a negative and reclusive thought in his bones when the doomsday was at stake? Human beings lived and died, the strong gathered together, and countless weak people prayed for salvation. Liu Ye said lightly, "Because the more you do, the more you will find that you can't do anything. Sooner or later the world will perish." He didn't know why he had such an idea, as if he had experienced it countless times. No matter how hard he tried, how he acted, trying his best or uniting all the forces that could be united, everything would still be irretrievably destroyed. And he could only watch helplessly. The more effort you put in, the more unwillingness you feel in your heart, and the more heart-piercing you will feel. If the ending is doomed, what's the point of how much he did and how well he did it? He pressed his fingers between his eyebrows to restrain the tiredness surging up like a tide, and only in front of Wen Liancheng, his only true friend, would he show a little emotion, but Wen Liancheng couldn't understand him at all. Most of the time, he can only let himself not think too much, and do what he should do like a normal person. He didn't want to continue this topic, so he stood up. Wen Liansheng didn't want to make the atmosphere tense, so he took out his mobile phone and said with a smile, "I heard you gave the gun to a girl." Liu Ye raised his eyebrows slightly, took it over and looked at the messages in the group, and cursed with a smile, "These little bastards." The joke was on his head. But is it really that little girl? Wen Liansheng also asked, is that girl really a psychic power? Liu Ye was also not sure, thinking of Bai Ziahu's stupid look and his behavior of smashing zombies. What kind of virtue is a psychic power type? Wen Liansheng looked at his expression, "You don't know her well." "Of course I'm not familiar with each other, just by chance." Wen Liansheng said, "Then if you have no objection, I plan to have the opportunity to get in touch with her. No matter what you think, our team already exists, and it has caused a lot of jealousy and made a lot of enmity. If we don't absorb new blood, we won't continue. Powerful, the children in the team will not end well when someone overtakes them. Even if they don't fight with others, the outside is still dangerous. A person with a suspected spiritual power, no matter who it is, will be scrambling for it, and he must fight for it. The reason why the Zhongyang team is so strong that no one dares to provoke it, and the reason why the casualty rate of the missions is extremely low, is precisely because there are many masters in the team." Liu Ye was silent for a while, nodded in agreement, and suddenly his face changed slightly. After Pangu went to rescue the emergency, there were 4 supernatural beings in their team. Wen Liansheng understood, "You mean 4 people with supernatural abilities, plus a suspected spiritual power type person who didn't go far." At this moment, the alarm bell in the hall rang sharply, which was a first-level distress signal issued by a team member outside. The correspondent on duty ran out from the opposite workshop and shouted, "Team Lu, Team Wen, the distress signal comes from Pangu, a commercial street on Xingkeng Road, Jiaxing County." With a solemn expression, Liu Ye returned the phone to Wen Liansheng, "I'll go there." Xingkeng Road Commercial Street, the street that was surrounded by more than a dozen people just now became empty again, but there were a few pools of blood on the ground, and in the original convenience store, there were 3 corpses that were torn to pieces. A tall zombie in ragged clothes, he was squatting on the ground and gnawing on something. The man who was embedded in the wall finally woke up and turned around. His head hurt like a hand had been inserted into his brain and stirred it, but before he came out, he saw the man squatting on the ground chewing. What kind of zombies are so frightened that all sounds are blocked in their throats? In particular, he also saw the corpses of his 3 companions in a miserable state, apparently torn to pieces by zombies. He trembled uncontrollably, but because he was embedded in the wall and couldn't move, he couldn't make any movement. He looked at the zombie in fear, but saw that it wasn't gnawing on the bone he imagined, but a fruit core. The same thing, with a bit of red flesh on it, sort of like a plum pit. The thing was only the size of a little finger, and the zombie awkwardly picked one up with its stiff fingers and stuffed it into its mouth, crunching it into pieces, chewing and chewing, as if savoring carefully. The man felt that he must be hallucinating. Don't zombies have no mind of their own, and can taste things? Then it finished gnawing the one in its mouth, and picked up another one to continue gnawing. When this one was finished eating, the zombie became visibly irritable. When it raised its head, the man saw a blue-gray face with yellowish-white eyes. The eyeballs were the size of pinholes and were only a few tens of centimeters away from him. There was a beast-like wheezing from inside, as if it was about to pounce on it the next moment. The man's teeth were chattering, and when his pants got wet, he passed out. The zombie leaned up and sniffed it. It seemed disgusted. It didn't bite the man. It slammed through the door frame and walked out with heavy and stiff steps. It smelled the wind, and suddenly a whirlwind appeared around it, and the whole zombie disappeared. At the same time, several streets away from here, Bai Ziahu was moaning. In the memory of the man on the wall, this area is the only commercial area nearby, but she walked down a few streets, and many shops were smashed and looted. How clean it is, the more important the supplies, the less they are left what to order, not to mention delicious, there is no biscuit crumbs left. Bai Xiaohu was chewing dry instant noodles while walking on the street, but she could meet a few zombies, and she could see the devilish energy from a distance. Even if the zombies were hiding in a corner, their body exuded he couldn't hide his devilish energy at all. Sometimes Bai Xiaohu wants to leave directly, but think about the great harm these zombies do to humans, and think about the miserable life of humans here. After all, if Bai Xiaohu can kill the zombies easily, still will make a move. So in just a few minutes, she killed 3 zombies. There were 3 more crystal nuclei, but she found that she had no place to put them, and she almost couldn't fit them in her belt. Then she passed a luggage store, walked a few steps, and then backed away. In the deepest part of the store, at the highest place, hung a solitary, yellow-orange, beetle-shaped toddler backpack with a plastic bag on it. Bai Xiaohu laughed, "Hey hey." She pointed her finger and said, "Bao." Yes, that's what people here call this thing. After a while, she threw the guns, knives, crystal cores, etc. in her belt into the bag, and the little devil chicken twittered on her shoulder. Bai Xiaohu was surprised. "You want to go in too? Want to experience it? All right, let's go in." Stuffing the little magic chicken into it and zipping it up, she put the little bag on her back with some difficulty and continued shopping. Suddenly, she looked at the skirt on her body. People here don't seem to wear it like this. There is a saying that when you go to the country, do as the Romans do, so should she also change into the clothes here? She thought about it. In a clothing store she passed by just now, there seemed to be a skirt hanging on the wall. She walked back and found the store. With a light wave of her palm, the dress flew off the wall. The skirt is made of a shiny material, dark yellow, with no arms, the hem is not long enough, and the fabric is very thin. Would it be strange to wear it? She scratched her head, holding her skirt in her hands and walking out in some annoyance, when suddenly she saw a group of people rushing over from the street. They were all dressed in black. At first glance, she thought it was a group of zombies, but she didn't feel the fluctuations of the demonic energy, only to realize that it was a group of humans in black clothes, but several of them were bloody, and they looked panic-stricken. The wolf chased after him. Bai Xiaohu looked at them curiously, and politely retreated to the side of the road. After all, the street is not very wide, so he was going to let them pass first. Unexpectedly, there was a man with green hair in the other party's crowd who looked surprised when he saw her, and shouted from afar, "It's you." Ah! Bai Xiaohu has just learned a little bit of the language here from other people's memory, and he hasn't practiced it yet, and he is not sure what the other party is yelling, so he just nodded in a daze, "Ah." Feeling that the other party wanted to talk to her again, she was a little bit dizzy. She felt that she was still not fluent in the human language here, so she hurriedly made a gesture of please, which meant that you should run and keep running, and you should keep going. No need to stop and talk. She also wondered why the other party seemed to know her. As a result, when those people saw her gestures, their eyes lit up in surprise, and the green-haired one shouted gratefully, "Thank you." At the same time, he shouted to the people behind him, "Go in and hide." Then a group of people ran into the shop behind Bai Xiaohu, where she had just come out. Bai Xiaohu, "Hey? She was in a daze. Why did she run into the house? That house didn't seem to have a back door? Seeing a group of people running in, she was so confused, she couldn't understand the situation at all. Her heart tightened suddenly. She turned around and saw that a few meters away, the wind was swirling, and thick black air bulged from the air out of thin air. Tlang equals NUS just a moment, www.shabeo.net checking if the SATA connection is secure.